Hi, welcome to Bigfoot Smalltalk, the show where we talk about big encounters in small doses. My name is Brad, I'm your host. If you've had an encounter with Bigfoot or Sasquatch, I want to hear from you. Email me at bigfootsmalltalk@gmail.com. Now, I originally had a different encounter that was sent in I was going to read through tonight, but I noticed in the last episode we had some comments about gifting. And when I saw this email come in the other day, I knew that I wanted to share it next because it just seemed so interesting. So, without further ado, this story is about a woman who lives in West Virginia and had some pretty interesting interactions with Bigfoot. Hello, Brad. My story might sound a little incredible. I know even I still have a hard time believing it. But I thought I would share with you the events leading up to the day, or should I say night, I saw a Bigfoot. I've lived in West Virginia all of my life. I live very close to the Monongahela National Forest, or what we call the Mon Forest. My backyard actually butts up right next to it. I'm a mother, but my kids are grown and have left the nest long ago. That's my way of saying I'm on the older side of life. Although my house is relatively secluded, I do have neighbors to my right about an acre away with two young boys. They are very well behaved, and I would often see them running through the woods behind my house playing with their friends. I have always been close with my neighbors since they moved here a few years ago. They are good people, people I can call on when I need help, and I often return the favor with baking them some sweet treats for their whole family to enjoy. Soon after they moved in next door, I got to know them and formed a strong connection with their family. Their children reminded me much of my own when they were younger, so when I would see them out exploring the woods behind my house, it would usually bring a smile to my face. The walk to the neighbor's house is a little treacherous for an old biddy like myself, so I wouldn't usually make a trek often on my own for fear of falling and hurting myself. I'm not what you would call graceful. So I'd sometimes wave to the kids from my back porch as they galloped through the trees, chasing each other, and they would always respond with saying hello and waving back. The weekends were big days for those children. They would be out all day, weather permitting, yelling and laughing as they played. One Sunday, I saw that they were up to their usual antics and thought that I would make them some cookies. I first called my neighbor to make sure it was okay with her, and then I immediately got to work mixing up the recipe. When they were finished about an hour later, I called my neighbor back to let them know that after lunch they could head out for a snack at my house, and that I would leave them on a small bench I had near the back of my property, and they could get them when they came back after lunch. From the kitchen window a little while later, I could see the three kids run up excitedly and tear into the cookies like ravenous little raccoons. This then became a tradition I would do most Sundays when the weather was nice. 4 or 5 weeks after the first time, I again set out the cookies around the same time in the afternoon. And by this point, I didn't feel the need to call their mother every time because they knew I would do this for the kids every Sunday when the weather was nice. I'm retired, it was fun, and it gave me something to do on lazy Sundays. As the sun began to set, I looked out the kitchen window to see that the cookies were still on the bench this day. I turned in for the night knowing that the kids hadn't come back, and with the cookies sitting out for that long, I figured they were best left for the squirrels at this point. An hour or two later, just as it got dark, I looked out the window and saw that the cookies were gone. This took me by surprise because their mother usually wouldn't let them play in the woods that late in the day, but I figured it was summer and maybe their curfew was getting later. I also could just make out something small that had been left on the bench, and I figured I would see what it was in the morning, assuming it was a hat or something the boys left accidentally. Morning came soon enough, and as I made my way out to the bench to investigate, I found a small rock sitting where the cookies had been. Once again, I assumed it was just something one of the kids set down while they ate and had forgotten when they left. I gently tossed it to the side and made my way up to the house. The following week came and went, and soon it was Sunday again, and I was back at it making some cookies for the kids. And once again, they didn't come by this afternoon, and I thought the cookies would go to waste. Just past dark later that day, I again noticed that they were gone and something was on the bench. I was puzzled. Maybe their schedule had changed and they were out later in the evening? I wasn't quite sure. Once again in the morning, I made my way out to the bench, and this time I found 3 rocks neatly placed in a line on the bench. I assumed maybe they played a game that involved rocks, a rock for each kid, two for the boys that lived there, and one for the friend they always had with them, and they left them there on accident. This time I decided to keep them on the bench, thinking that maybe they would come back for them. I remember that night very clearly. I was washing up some dishes at the sink, and every once in a while I would catch what I thought was a light out in my backyard near the woods. I never got a good look at it, so I didn't pay much attention to it, chalking it up to reflections in the window in front of me of the TV playing behind me. But it kept happening until I was finally able to lay eyes on it. And from my kitchen window, it looked like a flashlight of some sort. So I assumed the kids were out playing at night with headlamps on. The lights came and left soon, and I was in front of my TV watching my favorite program before bed. As I usually would, I went to get a glass of water to take with me to bed, and I remember as I was filling the glass, I just happened to look out the window again towards the bench to see a large figure standing there in the darkness. I didn't have my glasses on, so exact details I unfortunately can't relate to you. But the size and shape of the being told me it definitely was not one of the neighbor's boys. It stood there for what felt like an hour, but was really only moments, before walking off in big strides that just looked inhuman. After seeing that, I started to check all the doors and windows to be sure they were locked and cautiously went to sleep a few hours later with all of the lights on. Days after the sighting, I had a visit with the mother next door. We were chit-chatting about everything about weather, politics, and eventually I asked her about the boys and how they were doing. And I thought it was interesting that they were allowed to play later in the day. She told me that the boys were actually no longer allowed to play deep in the woods like before, because they kept running into what they called the bear man, which she assumed just was a black bear that had moved into the area, and for safety, she confined them to the yard. I tried to maintain my composure as I asked when they had seen it and how long they had been sequestered to their yard, only to find out it had been 3 weeks since they were told no more exploring in the woods without an adult. I've muddled this around in my head for months now, trying to understand what exactly happened in my yard that night and what was standing there. I don't understand the lights I saw, but after doing some research, I've seen how some others have had lights associated with their sightings as well. The only conclusion I can reach is that I was feeding a Bigfoot my grandmother's cookie recipes, and they left me rocks as a thank you. I'm sorry for such a long letter, and if this isn't interesting enough to post. I've only seen the thing the one time, and I often miss the sounds of children playing in the back, but I'm much more aware of what may be out there. Something that I would never have thought I'd see in the 68 years I've been on this earth. Thanks again, and please keep this anonymous. I appreciate it. Have a good day. It's a pretty interesting story. You don't generally hear a whole lot of encounters that involve gifting, let alone accidental gifting, which I thought was pretty unique. She didn't give a whole lot of detail about what she saw, but I'm assuming that with the size and shape that she's describing, she knows that it's not a person. And it sounds like she's done some research. I actually had a few more emails back and forth with her, and she's pretty certain at this point that what she saw was a Sasquatch. What I think she feels the most uncomfortable with is that she may have started some sort of relationship with it by giving it cookies, unbeknownst to her. She said that she keeps an eye out and she hasn't seen much evidence of it back, but with her house being so close to that forest, who knows where it could be. I look forward to hearing any more updates from her, and I hope that she gets back in touch with me if she does have another encounter. And if you've had an encounter, please email me at bigfootsmalltalk@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you and share it with the rest of the listeners. As always, be sure to subscribe and like this video, and I will see you guys next time.